The sound of a pen scratching against paper can be the loudest noise in the world when it's signing away 10 years of your life. I stared at the divorce papers sitting on the cheap laminate table of our rental apartment. The ink was still wet, glistening under the flickering yellow light of the kitchen bulb. It was a Tuesday evening, raining, the kind of cold, relentless rain that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. But the cold outside was nothing compared to the glacial temperature in the room. Vanessa stood by the door, her arms crossed, tapping her foot impatiently. She was wearing that red dress I used to love, the one I bought her for our 5th anniversary back when I had a steady paycheck. Now, it just looked like a uniform of war. Her suitcases were already packed, lined up in the hallway like soldiers ready to march out of a conquered city. She looked at me and said, "Are you done staring at it? Or do you need me to spell it out for you, David?" "Sign the damn papers." "I have a reservation at 8. I looked up at her, my eyes burning from sleepless nights and the sheer exhaustion of trying to keep everything afloat. I told her, "A reservation? We're ending our marriage, Vanessa. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound that echoed off the bare walls. She said, "Marriage? Is that what you call this? This poverty? This stagnation? David, look around you. You're 32 years old. You're sitting in a one-bedroom apartment that smells like mildew and failed dreams. You don't have a job. You don't have a future. You have a project." She made air quotes with her fingers, her face twisted in a sneer. "I'm done waiting for your ship to come in. It sank years ago." I whispered, "I'm building something. The software is almost ready. Once the beta testing is done, investors are lined up. I just need a little more time. A few more months." She snapped back, "Time is money, and you have neither." She slammed her hand down next to the papers. "I found someone who actually lives in the real world, David. Someone who drives a car that starts on the first try. Someone who can take me to Paris, not just promise it on a vision board." The revelation didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Somewhere deep down, I knew. I asked her, "So, that's it? You're leaving me for a wallet?" She leaned in close, her perfume overwhelming my senses, the scent that used to mean home, now smelling like betrayal. She said, "I'm leaving you for a man who provides. You? You're just a jobless loser playing with code in a dark room. You're a dead weight, David. And I'm cutting the cord. Sign the papers. Keep the debt. Keep this dump. I want nothing from you because you have nothing to give." My hand trembled as I picked up the pen. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. I signed my name. The loops of the D and the sharp lines of the D felt final. She snatched the papers the moment the pen lifted from the page. Finally, she breathed out, tucking them into her designer bag. She turned on her heel, the sound of her stilettos clicking on the hardwood floor like a countdown. At the door, she paused, but she didn't look back. She said, "Don't call me. Don't try to win me back when you inevitably end up sleeping in your car. Just disappear, David. It's the best thing you can do for the world." The door slammed shut. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat there for hours, listening to the rain, the ghost of her insults replaying in my mind on an endless loop. Jobless, loser, dead weight. That night was the rock bottom. I had $400 in my bank account, a laptop held together by duct tape, and a heart that had been ground into dust. But as the sun began to rise, casting a pale gray light over the empty apartment, something shifted inside me. It wasn't hope. Hope is soft. This was something harder, colder. It was resolve. She was right about one thing. The David she knew was dead. He died the moment that door slammed. The next 3 years were a blur of caffeine, code, and isolation. I moved into a basement studio that was even smaller than the apartment I shared with Vanessa, but it didn't matter. I didn't need space. I needed focus. I stopped shaving. I stopped going out. I ate instant noodles until the thought of sodium made me sick. I became a ghost, just like she asked. But in that silence, I built an empire. My project, the one she mocked, was an AI-driven logistics algorithm designed to optimize global shipping routes. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't flashy. But it was essential. 6 months after the divorce, I secured a microgrant. 12 months in, I had my first major client. 18 months in, I sold the proprietary license to a shipping conglomerate for a sum that had 2 commas in it. But I didn't stop there. I took that capital and founded Apex Systems. We expanded into cybersecurity and cloud infrastructure. By the time the 3rd year rolled around, I wasn't just solvent, I was wealthy. But not the loud, flashy wealth Vanessa chased. I didn't buy a Ferrari. I didn't post champagne photos on Instagram. I stayed in the shadows. I bought a penthouse in the city, sure, but I kept my circle small. I upgraded my wardrobe to bespoke suits, not for vanity, but because I was now walking into boardrooms with senators and CEOs. I worked quietly. I rebuilt myself brick by brick, dollar by dollar. The anger I felt toward Vanessa didn't disappear, but it transformed. It became fuel. Every time I felt tired, every time I wanted to quit, I heard her voice. "You're a dead weight." And I would type faster. I would negotiate harder. 5 years passed. Apex Systems was now the leading tech consultancy in the state. We had just moved into a new headquarters, a gleaming glass tower in the financial district. I sat in my corner office on the 40th floor, looking out over the city that once felt like a prison. It was a crisp autumn morning. The coffee in my hand was Jamaican Blue Mountain, poured by an assistant who anticipated my needs before I even spoke them. My intercom buzzed. It was Sarah, my executive assistant. She said, "Mr. Thorne, the interviews for the new vice president of marketing are scheduled to start in 10 minutes. The first candidate is here." She's a bit early, but she insisted on waiting. I asked, "Thank you, Sarah. Who is it again?" I didn't get a chance to review the final shortlist this morning. Sarah shuffled some papers and said, "Her name is Vanessa Caldwell. She has an impressive resume on paper, though there's a gap in the last year. She seems very eager." The world seemed to stop spinning for a second. The name hung in the air. Vanessa Caldwell. She had kept her maiden name, or perhaps reverted to it. I swiveled my chair around, facing the door. A cold smile, one that didn't reach my eyes, formed on my lips. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, but today, I was the one holding the punchline. I told Sarah to send her in. "And Sarah? Hold my calls. I want to give this candidate my full attention." I stood up and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, keeping my back to the door. I wanted her to see the view first. I wanted her to see the city I now own a piece of. I adjusted my cuffs, the expensive fabric smooth against my skin. The heavy oak door creaked open. I heard the click of heels, familiar, sharp, confident. A voice said, "Good morning." A voice I hadn't heard in 5 years, but one that still haunted my nightmares. It was dripping with that practiced charm she used on strangers. "I'm Vanessa Caldwell. Thank you for seeing me." I didn't turn around immediately. I let the silence stretch, heavy and uncomfortable. I wanted her to sweat. I said, "Please take a seat," keeping my back to her. She replied, "Thank you," the confidence in her voice faltering slightly. I heard the rustle of her sitting down, the soft exhale of breath. Then, slowly, deliberately, I turned around. I turned my chair completely, resting my elbows on the mahogany desk, fingers steeple in front of my face. The sunlight from the window behind me cast my face in shadow, creating a silhouette that felt imposing. I saw her squint slightly, trying to adjust her eyes. I said, "Ms. Caldwell, please sit." She sat down, smoothing the skirt of her dress, a dress that looked expensive but worn. Up close, I could see the cracks in the porcelain. The fine lines around her eyes were etched with stress. Her hands were manicured, but her cuticles were chewed raw. The man who provides clearly hadn't provided enough to keep time at bay. She said, "Thank you, Mr. Thorne." She hesitated on the name. She didn't recognize me. Why would she? The David she knew wore flannel shirts 3 sizes too big. He had a messy haircut and a perpetual slouch of defeat. The man in front of her wore a 3-piece Italian suit cut to perfection, had a groomed beard, and carried himself with the lethal calmness of a predator. To her, David was a memory of failure. I was a monument of success. I picked up her resume. I didn't make eye contact. I said, "Thorne, impressive background. Vice President of Marketing at Obsidian Corporation. But you left abruptly 6 months ago. Care to explain that gap?" She cleared her throat and said, "Well, the company was downsizing. The culture wasn't a good fit. I'm looking for a place that values vision and loyalty. I've heard Apex Systems rewards those who stick by their principles. I almost laughed. The irony was so thick I could taste it like metal. I repeated, loyalty. That is a core value here. We are a family. We don't cut people loose when things get difficult. We weather the storm. I looked up, locking eyes with her for the first time. Tell me, Vanessa, in your personal life, do you apply that same philosophy? Do you stick by people when the ship is sinking, as they say? She blinked, taken aback. But she was a salesperson. She knew how to pivot. She said, absolutely, Mr. Thorne. I believe that support is the foundation of any partnership. In fact, she paused, putting on a brave, tragic face. My own loyalty has been tested. I was married to a man who refused to grow. I supported him for years, paid every bill, sacrificed my own career dreams to fund his hobbies. But eventually, for my own mental health, I had to leave. He was dragging me down into an abyss. My blood ran cold. She was rewriting history in real time. She was selling my trauma as her martyrdom to get a job for me. I leaned forward, the light finally hitting my face fully. I said, is that so? He sounds like a terrible burden. A dead weight, perhaps? Her eyes widened slightly. That phrase, it triggered something in her brain. She whispered, yes, exactly. I continued, tapping my finger on the desk. And this man, did he ever try to build something? Project. Maybe some software that he claimed would change everything? Vanessa froze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She stared at me, really stared at me, for the first time. She looked at the scar above my left eyebrow, a souvenir from a childhood bike accident she used to kiss. She looked at the color of my eyes. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like a physical blow. Her skin turned a sickly shade of gray. The confident executive melted away, leaving a terrified woman gripping the armrests of her chair. She stammered, David? I corrected her, Mr. Thorne. To my employees. To you? I'm the guy who was jobless. The failure. The loser you left in a rainy apartment with a pile of debt and a broken heart. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She said, This is a joke. You can't be. You were broke. You were nothing. I stood up slowly, towering over the desk. I said I was building. And while you were chasing men who provide, I became the provider. Apex Systems isn't just a company I work for, Vanessa. I built it, owned it. Every chair, every computer, every client contract. It's all mine. The project you laughed at? It's currently valued at $400 million. She looked around the room as if the walls were closing in on her. Her gaze landed on the Entrepreneur of the Year award. The reality of what she had thrown away was crashing down on her. She started trembling and said, David, please. You have to understand. I was young. I was scared. I didn't leave because I didn't love you. I left because I wanted you to fight for yourself. It was tough love. And look at you now. She gestured to the office with a desperate, manic smile. It worked. I motivated you. We were a great team once. We can be again. She took a step toward the desk, reaching out a hand. I know I hurt you, but I've missed you. That man I left you for, he was a mistake. He was abusive. He lost all his money in bad investments. I've been thinking about you every day. I looked at her hand, the hand that had slammed the door in my face 5 years ago. I said, you didn't leave for tough love, Vanessa. And you didn't leave for a man who lost his money. I opened a folder on my desk. I pulled out a sheet of paper. I said, I do background checks on all executive candidates. Extensive ones. I slid the paper across the desk toward her. I said, you were fired from Obsidian Corp for embezzlement. You didn't leave because of culture. You were caught stealing client funds to pay off gambling debts. Your new man didn't lose his money. He left you because you drained his accounts, just like you tried to drain mine. Her face went from pale to ghostly white. She snatched the paper, reading the report. I said, you didn't walk into this office for a job. You walked in here looking for a new host, a new victim to leech off of. You thought you could charm a stranger into saving you from the consequences of your own greed. I walked around the desk and stood right in front of her. The smell of her perfume, once so painful, now just smelled cheap and desperate. I said, "But you didn't find a stranger, Vanessa. You found the ghost you created." Vanessa stared at the dossier in her hands, her fingers trembling so violently the paper rattled. She looked up at me, her eyes wet with tears. She choked out, "David, please, you don't understand. I'm in debt. Serious debt. The people I owe, they aren't banks. They're dangerous. I need this job. I need the signing bonus. I have nowhere else to go." She took a step forward, reaching for my hand again. I took a sharp step back, putting the corner of the desk between us. I said, "You have nowhere else to go because you burned every bridge you ever crossed. You speak of danger? The real danger was living with a parasite who drains the life out of everyone she touches. You killed the old David, Vanessa. You drained him until he was a husk. And now you want to feed on the man who rose from his ashes?" She cried out, "I can change. I can be an asset. I know marketing. I can help you expand. Just give me a chance. For old time's sake. For the love we used to have." I pressed the intercom button on my desk. The beep was loud, final. I said, "Sarah, please have security come to my office." Immediately, Vanessa gasped. "Security? David? No. Please don't do this. Imagine what it will look like. I'm a professional." I corrected her, "You are a liability. And at Apex Systems, we mitigate liabilities before they become disasters." 2 minutes later, the heavy oak doors swung open. 2 uniformed guards stepped in. They didn't look at her with pity. They looked at her like she was an intruder. One guard asked, "Mr. Thorne?" I gestured to the door and said Ms. Caldwell was just leaving. "Please escort her to the lobby. Ensure she doesn't stop to speak to anyone on the way out. And revoke her guest pass. She is permanently blacklisted from this building and all Apex subsidiaries." Vanessa looked from the guards to me, her mouth agape. The realization hit her. This was a public execution of her reputation. She hissed, "You can't do this. You petty, vengeful little man. You think your money makes you better than me. You're still just a loser with a computer." I leaned in one last time, my voice barely a whisper. I said, "And you are just a memory I'm deleting." I nodded to the guards. One of them took her arm. She shrieked, "Get off me." She struggled as they marched her toward the door. She looked back over her shoulder, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. David, wait. I'm sorry. Her screams echoed in the hallway for a moment before the heavy doors clicked shut, sealing the silence back inside my office. I stood there for a long time. I walked over to the window and looked down at the street, 40 stories below. About 5 minutes later, I saw a tiny figure emerge from the building's main entrance, flanked by 2 guards. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking lost, small, and insignificant against the towering skyscrapers. Then she walked away, disappearing into the gray swarm of the city. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 5 years. I walked back to my desk, picked up a resume, and dropped it into the shredder. The machine whirred to life, chewing up the lies in the past, turning them into confetti. I sat down and pressed the intercom. "Sarah?" "Yes, Mr. Thorne. Is everything okay?" I said, "Everything is perfect, Sarah. Send in the next candidate. And order everyone lunch today. On me. We have something to celebrate." 12 months later, the charity gala was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, competing with the flashbulbs of the paparazzi. I adjusted my tie as I stood on the stage, holding the heavy glass trophy for Philanthropist of the Year. I said into the microphone, "Thank you. This foundation isn't just about technology. It's about second chances. It's about investing in people who have nothing but a vision and the will to survive. Because sometimes hitting rock bottom is the only way to find out who you really are." I looked out into the crowd. I saw my team. I saw Sarah, now the director of operations. I saw my fiancée, Elena, a pediatrician with a heart of gold. She beamed at me, raising her glass. She didn't love me for what I provided. She loved me for who I was. After the speech, as the ballroom buzzed with conversation and music, I stepped out onto the balcony for a breath of fresh air. The city lights glittered below, a sprawling grid of opportunities. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a news alert I had set up a year ago. I unlocked the screen. The headline was from a local crime beat: former marketing executive arrested in multi-state check fraud scheme. There was a mugshot. The woman in the photo looked 20 years older than the one who had walked into my office a year ago. Her hair was matted, her skin sallow, her eyes hollow and dead. Vanessa Caldwell. She had tried to con the wrong loan shark. Now she was facing 10 to 15 years in a federal facility. I looked at the photo, searching for any feeling. Anger, pity, sadness. There was nothing. Just the indifference you feel when you read about a storm that happened in a country you've never visited. The karma wasn't just that she fell. It was that she fell because she refused to climb. She spent her life looking for an elevator while I took the stairs. I deleted the news alert. I blocked the keywords. Elena stepped out onto the balcony, wrapping her arms around my waist from behind. She asked softly, "Everything okay, love?" I turned around, sliding my phone back into my pocket, burying the past forever. I kissed her forehead. I smiled and said, "Yeah, everything is exactly how it's supposed to be." As we walked back inside, the cold wind blew over the balcony, carrying the dust of the city away into the dark, leaving nothing but the light.